Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to continue what we started in Unit 2. And this time around, we're going to talk about methods and arrays. Arrays are very useful for many things. Sometimes you want to store a large data items, a large number of data items. And instead of having different variable names, you could just have an array, maybe of 10 slots, and you can have this thing stored in them. And I've tried to show you some examples, but then today we're going to dive deeper into that. We're also going to look at methods. Methods, they're just like the functions in Python. They allow you to have compartments of your code that are detached from the main program, so that when you need to use them, you can just call them and use them. There are many reasons why you may want to use a method. So, to get started, first, we're going to solve this problem, which is kind of like going ahead just a little bit, then we take a step backward again. So imagine that you have to create a method that reads in an integer, all right, that is between 1 to 12, and it returns a name of a month, all right. So the whole idea of a method, before we begin that, I'm just going to show you a very simple method first. So a simple method is like a function in Python. Let's say you have a simple method that reads a number and returns the square of the number. So I'll say public static int. Okay, I can call the number square. All right, that's the name of the method. It takes a number, an integer number, n, and it returns n squared. All right. So a little bit of explanation on the different aspects of this declaration. Public makes sure that this method can be used in other classes across this project, which is good. Static, a bit more later, I'm going to explain to you the difference between static and non-static methods. But for now, it makes sure the accessibility of this method is a lot easier. Meaning I can access this method without having to create an instance of the class in which it's been defined. But I will take a time to explain to you in another video. In the meantime, just keep it in your mind that it makes sure that the method is accessible, a lot more accessible. This is the return type. So this method, when it needs to return something, this data type here is the data type that the method is going to return. In this simple problem, we are reading an integer n, and we are squaring that, and we are returning n squared. So if n is an integer, definitely n squared becomes an integer. So that's fine. Then it takes a parameter. So sometimes if you have a list of parameters, you can just indicate them. And the parameter list does not have to be of the same data type. So let's say you have 3 parameters. One is n integer, the other one is b. Then the third one is z, and it's a double. You can indicate that. Another thing you can do is to even have characters and strings here. However, for this example, we only know we are reading an integer n. So you can have a variable called answer, and you can square the number. You know that squaring a number is multiplying that number by itself. So it's squared, and you can return the answer. Easy. And now you can see the method is complete. If I do not put a return line, my method will get underlined, meaning that C# can see, or Visual Studio can see that something is wrong because I already specified that the return type is integer. However, if the return type were to be void, void means returns nothing, then everything will look fine. However, in this example, return is integer. This place gets underlined because it's incomplete. And if I bring back this line for return, everything now looks perfect. So let's run this and see. I'll go to my main program. So you can have your functions or methods as long as they are in a class. Everything is okay. So here is the main function, the one that I introduced you to a couple of weeks ago, that is called the public static void, the main function. All right. So in this function, I just want to call that method that we just declared. And the method is called square. As you can see, it's available. If I give 4 to it, I'm expecting what? 16. So I will run this. And you can see 16, that works perfectly well. So that's pretty much the whole idea of functions. You can have functions for different things. I'm going to just show you a couple of functions that I've pre-written here for you guys to see. This function displays 1 to 10. Because I just need to display 1 to 10, I do not need to input anything or have any parameter. So let's look at what's in this function. So it just simply has a loop that starts from 1, that goes to 10, and it has a write line that displays 1 to 10. That's it. So, and again, for this reason, it's a void function, and it's static for the reason of accessibility. Also, public because I want it to be available to other parts of the project, of the program. All right, so we go to the next one, display 1 to n. In this case, we don't know where n stops. So what would you like to do? You like to get a parameter in called n so that you can start from 1 to that n, increment by 1, and then you can display I. All right, easy, straightforward. So here is a method that returns an array. So again, sometimes when you say void, you know what it means. It returns nothing. Void returns nothing. Int returns int, but int with the square brackets means it's returning an array of integers. So the name of this method, for example, could be getArray, and this method there is an array declaration. There's a variable called a, and the array contents is enumerated, and the return a is here. In case we choose not to return a, let's say we have another variable called say y equals 3, and we are returning y instead, you're going to get an error. And the reason is that it's underlining y because it's expecting an array of integer, not just an integer. So you have to be sure that you're consistent to your data types specification, which is in this case an array of integers. Okay, so that's a simple method. We move to another method that is very familiar to you guys from Python, which is the factorial method. Again, return type is integer. We can call our factorial method anything we want. In this case, I give it the name getFactorial because that's a lot more reasonable. And it takes a parameter n. And again, this logic is one thing you're used to now. So factorial is 1. We go from 1 to n. We multiply until we return factorial at the end of it. So again, if I just need to call this method now, I can go to my main method. This is my main method. Instead of calling square, I call getFactorial. And Visual Studio will give us IntelliSense. And if I say 6, I'm supposed to get 720 for the factorial of 6. There you go. So that's 720. It works perfectly well. All right. So I'm going to go back to the methods. So that's factorial. Again, please try and convert some of aspects of your code like Fibonacci sequence, convert those things to methods and see how it works. Display value could be a method that you give a particular value to it and it just displays using console.writeLine. You can have another method that says display array and takes an array and displays the array. And because it's displaying, you could see that it's returning void. However, if value here was an array, then here you would have the square bracket next to it to say this is an array. So that's it. We're going to move on. Get month. So this takes us now to this problem. All right. So this problem says create a method that returns the name of a month and use a switch statement for it. It allows us to combine a switch statement with a method, which is good. And let's see how that works. So to save time and make sure the videos are not long, I already wrote the piece here. I'm just going to go ahead and explain it. Public static string. Public static, you understand, string because that's a return type. This method is supposed to take the index of a month, maybe 4 for April or 6 for June, or as we are in August, 8 for August, and return the name. So the return type is string and the input type, the parameter type is integer, int. So I initialize the value that is going to be the value I'm going to return at the end of the day. I call it month name and I say it's nothing. It's empty at first. Then I use my switch statement to say switch. Whatever this index is, if it's 1, please return a month name, January, break. Of course, you know the syntax of the switch statement. If it's 2, return February and break. And this would go on until 12. So I just want to waste time typing in all of that. When you're typing on your side, please go over everything. And if it's nothing between 1 and 12, then that's the default case. It serves like the else part of your if statement. And month name, now we say it's unknown month, all right, and break. And then you can return before you end your method. All right. And we can test this method also, get month, by just saying get month name. We know we don't have all the 1 to 12 in our method. We only have 1 and 2. So I just put 2 here so that we can see that coming out. February, it works fine. So it's pretty much square that I've explained. That's the first one I started with. So that's method for you in a nutshell. Please try and create as many methods as possible. It's very useful when you're trying to localize aspects of your program. And I will release a reading to you that explains more about why methods are very important. And we're also going to look at certain kinds of methods later on called recursive methods. And for this particular task that we have here, the framework class library has a method called month name in some languages like VB.NET that does this job here for you. So you might not have to create those ones. However, when we meet in the next videos, I'm going to discuss arrays, more methods and recursion than before we move to UML, which is the last thing in this unit. All right, guys, see you on the other side. Boom.